If you know anything about the Fuji X-M5, it is that it lacks in-body stabilization. I'm going to get into today how much this affects video usage with this camera. Overall, I think photography is fine, but with video, there are certainly some pain points that I should get into here, as I've reviewed on my previous video last week. If you haven't watched that video, please check it out where I explain my short-term experience with this camera. If you stick around till the end of the video, I actually have an interesting vlogging test between a much older 2016 release camera, the G85, and this, and I want to see exactly how they both compare when using the image stabilization 14-45 lens on the X-M5 and the kit lens on the G85 with its dual IS. Okay, moving on to the image stabilization test. I have here the 15-45 lens, and this has in-lens stabilization, and all of the settings are turned off, and I have it at 15 millimeters currently. Now, when I'm walking forward, this will probably be the best it will get on this lens at 15 millimeters compared to the 45 millimeter, where you can definitely expect much more shake the more telephoto you end up going. So how does this look? I'm just gonna do a nice straight walk, walking at a leisurely pace. Okay, moving on to 18 millimeters now. Let's see how this looks. I can only imagine that it's getting a little bit shakier the more zoomed in I ended up getting. Now we're gonna go into 24, which is about the max that anyone would ever want to do this. I have quite long arms, so it makes it a bit of a possibility here, but it is quite narrow right now for doing vlog style content. Okay, so now let's switch on the in-lens stabilization. Let's see how well this looks alone. Okay, now we have the lens set to 15 millimeters and we're using the in-lens stabilization here on this. How does this look? Does it look any better? Hopefully there's a bit of improvement over without using the in-lens stabilization. As I mentioned before, I'm not necessarily trying to be careful. I'm going to show you some shots of me trying to be careful in a little bit. However, I'm just kind of like walking casually here, like most people will be doing when they're vlogging. They're not going to hold on to it with two arms and then ninja walk their way. Okay, maybe I did demo it a little bit early for you. Okay, let's zoom in now a little bit. Okay, 18 millimeters, is it getting any more shaky? Curious as well, I'm using the continuous autofocus on this. How is it tracking me? Has it lost me yet? I'm actually pretty happy so far with the autofocus after using this as my last camera in studio. I can't say that it lost me once when doing that video, so big ups to Fuji for doing a little bit better with their continuous, although it's just a single subject, so it's not too hard to track. Okay, now let's zoom in a little more to 24. And this is a bit of a stress test on this here with the in-lens stabilization. If you have any other cameras with in-lens stabilization that work really well, please let me know, because I know this power zoom is not the greatest. So this test is more so a thorough review of the digital stabilization, because this only provides around 3.5 stops of in-lens stabilization, I believe. Okay, now let's switch to the digital mixed in with the in-lens stabilization. Okay, now we have the image stabilization turned on in the lens and also the digital stabilization at 15 millimeters, just like before. Now let's do a little bit of walking. Let's see exactly how well this looks. Really curious. I can see already that it's cropped in quite a bit. It looks more like 18 or 19 millimeters now at this point compared to the APS-C 15 millimeter before. So with that being said, I'm not going to be able to go anywhere near 24 millimeters without you looking right up into my nose. Okay, now we're at 18 millimeters right now, and this already looks like the 24 from before. Gonna just do some walking with that. And I can imagine that this is actually pretty narrow for probably most people. Okay, now let's go to 24, and as you can see here, I really have my arm extended and I can see it losing a bit of focus here. Just for a bit of a laugh, I'm going to try and vlog now with the IS mode boost on, and this is only for static handheld shots. So like right now, what I'm doing right now, this should be pretty stable at 15 millimeters. Now let's do a little bit of walking with this, and from the tests I've done so far, this is not gonna achieve really great results because it is for static shots. You're supposed to turn it off when walking forward like this and doing any sort of non-static movements. Okay, let's go back. And I should mention as well, this was shot on f/log2. All right, now that we're back, I think it's time for me to go behind the camera, and we're gonna try and see how stable we can get the footage when just walking forward. And it might be a little bit easier for you to figure out how well this camera will work for cinematics type of movements, okay? Let's get into that now. So now, when you're just standing like this, just in one place, not really moving around too much, I think this is probably gonna do really good for just doing like light little pans back and forth. However, this camera really does not excel at straightforward walking shots. And we're gonna do some shots now where I test this with me behind the camera, trying to be somewhat steady with the camera, okay? Let's go. So this camera really struggles with being stable based on how light it is. Now I'm walking forward, trying to be as careful as possible, doing a bit of a ninja walk here. And I can only imagine how shaky that this footage is with no image stabilization on. Now with the in-lens stabilization on, testing to see how stable we can get this. This is at 15 millimeters. I'm walking nice and slow, somewhat controlled to my best abilities. We're going to try now to add in digital stabilization with the IS mode boost off. Okay, so now the in-lens stabilization is on with the in-body digital. Again, this is at 15 millimeters. How does this look? Could you notice much of a difference between these two examples? Currently what you're looking at is me holding the camera with my elbows tucked to my side using the lens stabilization along with the digital stabilization along with the IS mode boost, which is suitable for handheld static shots. How does this look? Gonna do some panning back and forth, where I'm just kind of swaying my body. Nothing major, just to really see how well you can kind of do some cinematic sort of shots if you'd like. Oh, there goes the autofocus. Now let's zoom this in a little bit here. See exactly how well this works at something like 45 millimeters on APS-C. To me, it looks pretty good if you're just doing really slight movements, nothing entirely too jerky. I think it's not too bad. Currently right now I am kneeling and I'm holding this still in that same IS mode boost along with the other stabilization settings. I'm just showing you how stable it can be if you just really try and focus on holding it steady handheld. And this was at 30 millimeters too. Now going to 15. How does that look? To me, reviewing the screen here, it looks really quite stable, surprisingly. Another way of stabilizing this camera that I also tried was syncing the gyro data by using my iPhone, and that was mounted on top of the camera. However, I never really was able to get proper results doing this. Let me know if anyone here has been able to do this, because you're able to actually unlock the gyro data if you mount something like a DJI Action 4 or 5, I believe even a 2. For whatever reason, my 3, you're not able to do that, but there's also iPhone and Android apps that also allow you to sync this information. And technically speaking, it should work. However, I wasn't able to achieve very good results doing so. One thing that I thought could also be a good thing to test is seeing how well this performs in higher speed modes. So currently I'm shooting at 60p with 120 frame rate, and I want to see how well DaVinci Resolve can stabilize this footage in post with the higher speed rate, which often you can achieve a little bit better results by doing this. So right now I still have all stabilization off and I'm shooting at 200 shutter speed with that same 60p setting. How does this look? Again, also this is 15 millimeters. And I'm also getting some camera shut-off warnings. This X-M5 definitely heats up compared to all my other ones that I own. Once again, lens stabilization is on. This is shooting in 60p, 120 frame rate. How does this look? Going to turn on the digital stabilization now while doing this walking test. The digital stabilization is on now with the lens stabilization. Just walking forward now in the 60p 120. How does this look? I will do one more test, cranking up the shutter speed to 300 with both the lens and the digital stabilization on, and then we're gonna move on to our next test. 320 shutter speed now with the image stabilization on and the digital stabilization is on. And I've had this camera, when I shut it off, not be able to turn back on a few times now. So I'm definitely going to be looking towards getting a fan on this camera, because really it's not too realistic to be able to shoot videos in the heat here without having these issues, unless I want to switch out to something like my Nikon Z6III or even this guy. Okay, so now I'm gonna just set it to my normal video speed, and this is shooting at 30 frames per second and a 60 shutter speed. And I want to do a comparison actually with that G85 camera with how stable it is. And I'm going to turn on all the stabilization modes in the camera, and it's going to compete against the dual IS in the G85 that I have. All right, let's go. Starting off doing my walking test, I'm going to walk forward with both these settings on my Fuji X-M5 before switching off to the Lumix. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the Lumix G85 is 9 years older, so it's going to be interesting to see exactly how well these two compare at a 24mm equivalent. Okay, time for the handoff. Okay, let's start doing this walking test here. Now, I did lie a little bit when I said that it would be equivalent focal lengths. I had forgotten that the Lumix G85 actually has a little bit of crop when shooting in 4K mode, but I'm just going to try and hold it out a little extra further. And how does this look in comparison? I have my suspicions that a camera this old still beats it out, especially in regards to doing vlogging style content. Now, I picked this camera only up for $350, so maybe you don't have to spend all the money that you thought you had to buy a vlogging camera. So this is just going to give you some ideas of it was actually worth it for you to buy the X-M5 when there are much cheaper options out there. You can get a pretty sweet camera these days at a really affordable price. So it's really a good time to be alive if you're wanting to find a new camera. Now it's time for the Lumix G85 straightforward walking test. I'm shooting at 30p with 60 frames. Dual IS is on, and I'm at around 26 millimeters. I did forget, however, that there was a bit of a crop shooting in 4K with this camera. However, just to keep things on the same playing fields with similar image quality, I will be keeping it on this 4K mode. Now, looking at the image here, it looks pretty stable. And this is using a lens with image stabilization built into it, the 12-60. I should mention as well, for vlogging style content, you really don't need autofocus. So this G85, just manually focusing the lens and setting things up with the zoomed in manual focus rangefinder, you can easily set up vlog shots with this camera too. So don't let older cameras autofocus sway you, because you can always manually focus things and it's really not that hard to do. Okay, I realize probably no one has asked for this test here, but we're gonna see exactly how well this works as doing a bicycle vlog style video. Oh my God, this is not ideal. Okay, well, that didn't work out so well to start. I think this is probably a little bit too narrow of a path, and on top of that, it is in the forest with lots of bumps. And I'm using a very breakable, cheap camera. So no one is probably stupid enough to do this other than myself. However, if you're curious what sort of biking content you can do, okay, here we go. This is a bit flatter of a stretch here. I think maybe a few people might be interested in this, though, just based on how nice of a biking camera this would possibly be, considering its lightweight size. You could easily just pack it alongside your bike or somewhere nice and convenient, and this could be a pretty ideal way of documenting life on a motorbike, or, well, you wouldn't want to hold on to it then, but, or just doing bicycle riding cross country or something like that. So, and you could potentially also get some sort of a mount for your backpack that could hold it there nice and securely and could be all right to use in that sense. Oh. So this test was done with the in lens stabilization turned on, and I would not recommend trying this at home, especially riding around mountain bike trails, unless you're really confident at what you're doing. And I am not. I'm just an idiot, ladies and gentlemen. Just an idiot here. Hey. Okay, wait. Oh. All good, my fault. Have a good one. Oh yeah, I had to brake as a kid, was crossing the bike path at the same time as me, and I took the handlebars on my side. Oh, what an idiot I am. Anyway, okay. Turning this video off now. We're just on a straight stretch here, so I mean, this is actually pretty easy. And probably shows a more realistic, and probably shows a little more realistically how well this performs doing a vlog with the camera while riding on flat ground. I think it probably looks pretty good. How's the inland stabilization working? I bet it's pretty smooth on a bicycle. Just need a little foot power and a bicycle. Crackheads can afford bicycles, or at least steal one, so why can't you, right? Anyways, I'm going to stop embarrassing myself on this public road here and put the camera away. Adios. I'm gonna get into my final thoughts now, explaining my results and what I think is the best thing to do when shooting videos with the X-M5 that you want to stabilize. First off, I find that the IS mode boost while doing vlog sort of work, when you keep the perspective a little lower and not up high, I think there is some benefit to doing so. If you are really able to easily see the ground, it really can help add to the warping effect that you get. And I think you would probably also want to avoid doing that in areas where there's like straight vertical subjects like buildings and whatnot, because I think it will just be a little bit too distorted in that sense. In my opinion, if you're shooting IS mode boost, you really want to minimize having a strong foreground subject, because the warping you get in the background, as shown here in the examples, can be quite excessive, and there's really no way to stabilize the footage. So this is one of the reasons why I was pretty hesitant to use any sort of electronic stabilization before doing proper testing in my previous video, because it is baked into your footage and there's really nothing you can do about that afterwards. I think DaVinci Resolve is probably the safest method in order to stabilize your footage. And I believe I was able to achieve pretty good results when I went to 60p in 4K mode. And I think even in 6K mode, just shooting in IS mode boost without a strong foreground, and then also stabilizing it over and above that in DaVinci, it also provided really great results as well, as shown with some of the panning movements. Even though it says that it's for stationary static movements, it still worked pretty good with panning movements if you're shooting something at infinity. If you're wanting to shoot vlog style content with this, I really recommend you use something like this 14mm 2.8 by Fuji, or something around this range, in order for you to crop quite heavily in post if needed. So I would say even like a 9mm or a 12mm would be excellent. And that's something that I also want to pick up, the Laowa 9mm 2.80D lens. I think honestly for vlogging content, that would be an almost ideal lens for doing some heavy crops afterwards. Okay, well, that is all for the video today. I hope that this video provided you with the knowledge in order to decide whether or not this camera would be right for you for vlogging sort of work, or just how well this performs in any sort of cinematic video situation, and what exactly you can do with a camera without any in-body stabilization, and if there are some potential workarounds that you can still work with it despite this. Well, that is all for me today. Callie, say goodbye. All right, well, hopefully the autofocus worked well enough here, and I will be signing off. Thank you, everyone. Take care. If you have any suggestions for what you'd like me to cover and test, I'm here and I am open to doing so. So anyways, that is all. Take care, everyone. Bye.